So in our previous video, we did a full build of the Nord5 HD, my new 5-inch premium drone. And I call this one premium because of all the high-end features packed into this one unit. We're talking about an F7 processor with built-in memory, Wi-Fi, barometer, compass, GPS, express ELRS, and even the new O3 Air unit. The only thing missing from this drone is pretty much sonar. But since our last video, I don't even know if this thing even powers on. So let's put a battery to it and see if this thing comes to life. Okay, so here's the Nord5 HD. I have my battery here, 6S battery. It's gonna be a 6S drone, obviously, and I have my smoke stopper in here. And this is the time of truth, guys. Now, this thing is all sealed up. I probably should remove the top plate and just give it another look over. But the honest truth is that when I built this thing, I looked at it so intently when I was building it. Really shouldn't be any issues on this, you know, knock on wood. We have wood right here. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I made sure I did this as accurately as possible. And hopefully if anything goes wrong, then the smoke stopper is gonna hopefully intervene. So let's plug this in and see if it even comes on. I mean, this is like nerve-wracking. This is a really expensive build. Let's just do it and see how it behaves. All right, so it tripped it. Oopsie. Dude, I freaked out so hard. I was pressing the wrong button. That's so freaking scary, but we got the tones and that is a good thing. Let's try it one more time. All right, that looks so good. The air unit is powered up. Hopefully my hopefully my receiver is powered up. So that means all that is working good. Whoo! All right, so now that everything appears to be fine, we're gonna have to configure this whole thing. There's nothing on this. These are just all the components that we did in the previous video, put together and assembled. And we wanna accomplish 3 things before we go for our first flight. The first thing is to flash the flight control with Betaflight on here and put a tune and our rates on here. Now that's only one step, but there's a lot of things to consider in just putting the flash on this flight control. It's gonna be time-consuming part of the whole setup here. Next, we want to go and flash the receiver. Obviously, this is Express ELRS. We're just going to put our information on this receiver so it binds automatically to our radio. And then the last thing is I want to activate and set up the O3 Air unit. Now, this is a new O3 Air unit, and I'm going to try to see if it's going to bind automatically to my goggles before I do the flash and update. But usually with DJI products, you have to activate it first and then put the latest firmware on there before you can even use it. So let's go to the computer and get this thing started. Okay, so we're here at the computer. We have our Nord5 HD here. I have my USB-C plugged into the flight controller. I have my USB-A plug here. Now the first thing we want to do here is flash the flight controller with the latest version of Betaflight. We're now currently on, I think, Betaflight 4.3.2 or something like that. I'm going to make the leap to Betaflight 4.4 just because I want all the features of the newer version, whether it be the OSD layout, HD, or the auto return or auto land with the return to home feature with this drone. Now we're just going to plug this in just like any other drone into the computer. And it recognizes it right here, Betaflight STM FX32 F7. And we want to flash this thing first. Let's see here, it doesn't show anything. Let's connect and see what it says. So Diatom Mamba F722. It's good to notice right here, 2022B. Okay, so we're gonna flash our flight controller here with this new version of Betaflight. All right, so here's some of the features here from this new configurator here, and you can actually, you know, eliminate some of the stuff you don't need flashed to your drone. For example, S-Bus or Ghost. I'm not going to be using Ghost. I can just delete that. All right. Now, by you deleting some of the stuff, you can save some space on your actual flight controller. And if you do want to do the traditional load, you can just hit the classic mode and it will download everything or flash the whole thing on here with every available option. Obviously, we have flash memory, which is good for the data login. We have OSD and we have VTX. I do have some more options that we want on here. We also have Barrel. We're going to add that to it. And I think we should be good this time. So let's just flash this bad boy. It's erasing, it's doing it this time, and we should be good to go. Flashing it. All right, programming successful. That was good. And we should be fine. All right, so our ports tab on here. UART3 should be our VTX, which we have on here, which looks good. All right, so we're gonna change this right here to first gyro, only because as you can see here in the setup here, when we did the installation of this, we had to turn the gyro forward 180. So the arrow is facing the rear, and you can see right here, when I pitch down, it shows up. And when I pitch up, it pitches down. So let's see if I can change this to what it should be. You know, it was at 270. So let's try 9. That should be it right there. There we go. I figured that was it. It's amazing how it says 270. All right, presets. Oh man, which one am I gonna use? That's the real one. We have all these presets on tune on here. Let's just go with this one right here. Pick. All right. OSD. So I'm gonna set one profile for regular flying with minimum OSD stuff in there, and the second profile will be for like GPS coordinates and all that good stuff. This looks all good. VTX, that's not gonna show anything. We're using the DJI O3 air unit. All right, I think we should be all good here. I have to save somewhere on my computer. Let's go up here. I have all my Express ELRS stuff on here. Holy crap, it is there. Express ELRS RX has been on Wi-Fi mode the entire time. Once I flash this, this should connect to my radio, which I have right here. Update. Just doing it. All right, that's good. All right, so it's not gonna work because this thing is still on Wi-Fi. Oh, it shows it, it actually resetted. So there it is. I can see telemetry, which is amazing. There you go. Down, up, left, right. Armed. Angle, horizon, angle, GPS rescue. This is all great. We have our air unit also powered up. We're good, guys. This drone here is complete, configured. We should be good. I can put the props back on. I want to see quickly if I can see it in here, but I haven't bound it yet. So, all right, guys. So the air unit is not going to bind here. I need to activate my actual VTX and update the firmware, and then we can have a bind. But with the simple bind process, it's not going to let me do it until I activate the actual VTX. All right, so it's activated. Activation success complete. Let's try to bind these now. I'm gonna hit the bind button on this. All right, it's flashing. I'm gonna hit the bind button on my goggles as well. Did that. You can hear it beeping. And there you go. I can see everything. Haha, that's pretty cool. And I have OSD in here. Okay, so we have our Nord5 HD flash. The flight control is flash. We have the receiver flash. We have our DJI O3 air unit flashed as well, activated and also bound to our DJI goggles V2, and it all works. So let's head back to the table. We'll put the props on here and maybe do an indoor flight. That's kind of typical of me. So we'll try an indoor flight and see how this thing flies indoors. Okay, so we're back to the desk here. We have our drone here. We have everything configured, and the flight controller is flash with the Betaflight 4.4, so the latest and greatest. All right, so we're gonna put these props back on here and try to arm this thing and see if it can get liftoff. All right, so this is all good here. Now this propeller blade here is really sharp. This thing gave me a good little, I don't wanna say cut, but, oh, it did cut me, so a good cut. Let's see how much it weighs. All right, 653, not bad. This is a big boy. This is not a small drone at all, so we gotta be very careful. This thing has onboard storage as well, so it can record with the built-in storage. All right, let's do this, guys. This is gonna be scary. I'm gonna stand way back here. All right, let's arm it. I'm in angle mode. Whoa. All right, so we gotta do some testing there. Something is freaking out. So we'll take a look at that. Oh man, that thing said, get me the hell out of here. I'm gonna take a look at this and then we're gonna go for a flight. I tried to fly indoors, it didn't work. So I'm gonna take a look at some of the settings and then yeah, go take it for a flight. Okay, so we're back from our flight test, and the Nord5 HD did an amazing job through numerous tests over a period of weeks, guys. I'm very proud to own and have built this drone right here. This is gonna be a keeper for a long time. Now, before we do a breakdown of the flight review, I do wanna talk a little bit about some of the things that we discovered or we had an issue with before going on those test flights. The first thing here, as you saw before, we didn't have the GPS connected to the flight controller. We did have the plug back here, but I was waiting for my TPU mount to come in the mail. And as you can see, we have a color match GPS holder here for my GPS and my compass, as well as a built-in express ELRS antenna holder as well. So it's a 3-in-1. It holds my compass, GPS, and my express ELRS receiver, and it fits seamlessly behind here with my DJI antenna. So really, really cool mount. I'm impressed how clean it looks, and this just completes the look. Now, besides that, since we're talking about cosmetics, we also did put some tape on these wires for the motors. These are the special, I think these are electrical, not electrical tape, but these are for like automotive tape. I'll leave a link down below. You can get this on Amazon anywhere, but these are pretty cool tape, very mesh cloth-like material. They're very strong and gives it a clean look. And that really makes this thing look even cleaner than we last saw it. Really, really good. And I'm impressed with the way it looks. Now, finally, we saw that the drone was kind of sporadic in our last video before we went on our test flight. This thing was just spiking up in the air, and that had to do with an inaccurate or wrong setting in my radio. The gist of it pretty much is that I had the wrong settings for my express ELRS, giving this thing some wrong packets and then giving me some jerky movements as I was flying it. Now, shout out to Mark from UAV Tech for helping with that issue, and he kind of diagnosed this problem as I sent some data logs to him, and he kind of figured out it was my radar having the issues. All right, now that we have all those housekeeping items out of the way, let's talk about the Nord5 HD and how it flew. Let's talk about the flight characteristics first. This thing was a dream to fly, guys. No other way to put it. There's a lot of factors here playing a role in my, I guess, observation or the way I feel about this drone. Obviously, I built it. We'll talk about the aesthetics later, but also the fact that I'm using the O3 air unit for the first time. So a lot of factors playing a role in here, but this thing was a dream to fly. It was so smooth, guys. Now, this drone here is flashed with Betaflight 4.4, and I'm using a Betaflight preset on here. Nord5 does claim that this thing does provide a smooth vibration-free flight, but never once did I have any kind of vibration in the image. This thing flies very, very, very smooth, guys. No matter where you point this, it's pretty smooth. Now, I also flashed the ESC on here to the latest firmware, as well as changed the PWM from 24 to 48. So it's a little bit smoother in the motors. Not that I needed it, but I was just trying to make it as smooth as possible. And maybe that did help, but this thing is amazing. No matter where I point this drone, point it down, left, right, it is surprisingly smooth, guys. It's really hard to explain how it feels because it feels very snappy and responsive, yet smooth. It's almost like flying a performance Cinewhoop or a very smooth freestyle drone. It's the best way I can explain how this thing here moves. It's just very graceful when you want it, but still snappy when you move the controls on the radio. Very, very, very smooth. Overall, this drone here has really good composure no matter what you're doing with it. I tried numerous things with this, obviously, because I have the O3 camera on here. So I did try some smooth cinematic flights. I did try to do some freestyle, try to do some long range as well, since I have the GPS on here. And no matter what I do, this drone here is very, very versatile. Now, talking about speed and performance of this drone, this motor and prop combo here is perfect for this drone of this size. Now, these are the 2306 by Emax. These things work really well, give me a lot of torque and power. Now, in my build video, I did say that the 2306 is slightly larger than the 2207 motors. Now, that's not correct. Now, although these are a little bit wider in diameter than the 2207, they're actually smaller by way of volume. Just a little bit. But with that said, I did want to correct that. These are just a little bit smaller. But besides that, these things are pretty torquey. Never once did I have an issue with torque and power. In fact, when I first started flying this, I thought it was just a little bit too peppy. This drone here weighs a little bit over 600 grams. And even with that, this thing just felt so light with these props and motor combo. So these things are put up very, very well. And I did mention that maybe this might give me better battery life. And in fact, I was totally surprised because this did return some really good flight times, and we'll talk about that later when we talk about the battery and the battery flight times on this drone. Okay, so let's move on to the big deal here, and that's the visuals of this drone. We are using the DJI O3 air unit on this, and this is a relatively new system on the market, getting a lot of interest from pilots as well as myself, hence the reason why I have it in this drone. Now, I've owned the O3 unit for a long time. I've done a full review on it. There was a lot of excitement to try this out. Now, I did pair this up to my DJI goggles V2 that I have right here. And I did make a video why I'm using the DJI goggles V2 versus the DJI goggles 2. And there's a strong case to be made that these V2 goggles are the better choice for the new O3 Air systems. Now, having said that, once I put the goggles on, it was apparent, even in the room here, it was clear that this thing here was a lot more vibrant, a lot more resolution compared to the original air units. There's no doubt about that. That thing was amazing. Outside, it's even more spectacular with the bright sunlight. The colors are vibrant, very clear image, and it's a significant improvement than the original air unit. Now, the colors come from the camera is very vibrant. Now, I don't have any OLED displays in my goggles V2. That's reserved for the goggles 2, but the image and the colors were very, very vibrant, but not overbearing. One thing I did notice though, that the image was just a little bit darker than I wanted to, and that's a characteristic or trait of these O3 cameras on here. No big deal. It still worked very, very well, and this thing does build your confidence. This camera is confidence inspiring. I guess that's the whole theme of this whole drone here. But this camera here allows you to do a lot of things. This thing had me push this drone, this new drone, to the limits. Whether it be flying faster than I want to, flying higher, flying further away, or just shooting random gaps that I typically wouldn't do just because of the increased resolution and clarity from this camera. So it does build your confidence. I was flying this drone further and further away than I typically would my other FPV drones. Almost similar to my normal DJI camera drones. That's how far I was flying it, and it performed very well. I guess we can talk about the VTX here pretty soon, but I bring this point up only because I was flying this thing so far that at certain points I did get a telemetry warning from my radio just because I was flying it so far. So now, granted, I was running this at 150 milliwatts, but typically Express ELRS does a pretty good job when you're flying pretty far, but it's just a testament to show you how well this thing performs outdoors in a rural environment where there's trees and buildings, and I was pushing this thing really, really far. And yes, I do get the occasional, mushiness, the occasional pixel, the increased latency in the video. You can notice it slightly, that does exist, but I still can see where I was flying, and that does give you confidence to fly. In my case, the way I was flying, it does give me confidence to explore, which is what I was doing with this drone most of the time, doing some sightseeing, exploring, and just some cruising flying. And I think this setup here is phenomenal for that. Now, talking about that, we have the VTX in the back here. This thing does a really good job. We have this one antenna mast in the back. And we talked about the performance earlier. The penetration was never a problem. I would see this thing drop down. Now, in my case here, I can see every telemetry or OSD menu in my goggles. The only thing is I cannot record that OSD menu or OSD on my DVR, and that's only with the goggles V2. If you do own the goggles 2, then because it was made for this camera, then you can record the telemetry on that. That's the one advantage, the big advantage of the goggles 2. So in this case, I hate to do this. I hate to make a video without having the proof to show you. But in my case, the DJI Goggles V2 does not record Betaflight OSD in the DVR, although I can see it in the goggles live when I'm flying. But this thing performed very well. It does get pretty hot, obviously, but never once was an issue, never once did it stop recording. And this thing did record at 4K at 60 frames per second, never once did it have an issue, never once did it stutter. And I am honestly pleased with it. The only, is it a deal breaker? I mean, I guess it is a deal breaker. The only deal breaker is the recording of the OSD, only because I do tons and tons of testing, and I don't think you as the viewer, any person should trust anyone without seeing the evidence. And that's the reason why in all my past reviews, I do show you, whether I talk about battery life or RSSI or signal, I also want to show you that in the telemetry, because it's one thing for me to say it, but for you to see it for yourself, that's confidence inspiring, and that's one thing I can't do with that. Now, talking about the range and performance of the VTX, let's talk about the range and performance of my receiver. Now, we have an Express ELRS receiver on the back here, and this thing did an amazing job, guys. Really, really good. I would recommend either you get Express ELRS or maybe Crossfire for these kind of drones, especially DJI, since you have the range and penetration to fly this thing really, really far. Now, this receiver did a pretty good job. Never once did I experience a fail-safe. Now, I'm flying in dense wood or a dense forest, and I'm flying this thing near and far. I'm pushing the limits of the, well, in my case, I was just trying to test the limits of the O3 air unit, but as a consequence, my receiver was also tested in the process. Now, I was running my radio at 150 milliwatts, and there were some times where I was flying this thing really, and I mean really far, as well as low to the ground, and sometimes I'll get RF signal low from the speaker or the call-outs from my radio. Now, talking about that, as I said before, I had the GPS in the back here. This was one of my highlights because I do like to have a security blanket for my drones, especially expensive drones. We have these nice motors. You have the O3 air unit in here, this nice stack in here. It's a pretty expensive drone and something that's feature packed. So I decided to put GPS on there. The only thing this thing doesn't have is sonar on here. And the GPS did an amazing job. But I did come back on here, and I don't have, oh, I have it right here actually. I did put this insulation tape on here, this copper tape. I'll leave a link down below where you can find this. This thing is a godsend. This thing is amazing. I won't say it's pricey, but I did wrap my wires for my GPS in this material to prevent any kind of interference. It's been known that sometimes some drones can have some interference, giving you the potential to reduce the amount of satellites or giving you a slow lock on satellites. But I'm proud to say that this receiver on here, this antenna, is it's amazing. Where I typically fly, I get, usually when I start off, around 5 to 6 satellites with my other drones. With this one, it takes like 20 seconds and I have 8 satellites immediately. I think I was averaging, and I say average, around 20 satellites. I think the most I saw was 25 to 26 satellites when I'm flying. So this thing is amazing. I don't know if it has to do with this insulation on here, keeping interference out. Now, this is a little bit larger GPS antenna on here, hence the reason why I was having a hard time finding an actual mount for it. But even in this configuration right here, it's amazing, guys. Now, we are using Betaflight 4.4 on here, so this thing does have the advanced feature or the advancement or the progression of return to home, where this thing will come back home to you and land and then turn off the drone. I did try it a few times. Initially, I did have the compass on, and the compass probably wasn't calibrated because whenever I hit the return to home, it would go in the wrong direction. Although it did know where my coordinates was or were for home, the compass just made it go in the other direction. So I disabled the compass for now, and the home arrow is working adequately well, and the return to home works pretty well as well. This is gonna save my bacon in case I do lose this or push this thing over water. Having said that, having GPS does help me a lot. I'm in Florida, there's a lot of water around, and yeah, if I were to fail safe, then I'm pretty glad that this thing is not gonna just go into the drink and then lose it forever. It's gonna come back home to me. Okay, so let's get down to flight times of this drone. This is another concern of mine. I was hoping that I would get around 5 minutes of flight time. This is a 6S drone, purposely built for 6S. And I do get the power from a 6S drone. This thing is amazing. Now, I flew this with 2 batteries. I have a 1250 milliamp hour 6S as well as a 1300 milliamp hour 6S battery. 2 different manufacturers. They work pretty well. And as I said before, I was expecting between 4.5 to 5 minutes of battery life. And this drone here exceeded that by a lot. I don't know if it's the combination of the motor or just my flying style. I was averaging, guys, around 7 to 7.5 minutes of flight time, which is, for me, that's pretty cool. I can't even complain about that. And that's mixed flying. That's cruising for a few seconds, then doing some aggressive maneuvers, punch outs, dives, whatever. And sometimes I would get 8.5 to even 9 minutes of flight time with this drone. For me, performance is multiple things, just not performance and thrust and speed. It's multiple aspects. How long can I fly in the air? How long is it gonna take me to get into the groove, get into the flow? And then once I get into the flow, how much more flight time can I get with that? And I was pleasantly surprised how much flight time I was getting with these 6S batteries. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the aesthetics and the durability of the Nord5 HD. Now, I typically don't talk about aesthetics because you can't really control that. That's more of a design of the manufacturer, although you have a choice in choosing whether you want the drone because of the looks. Now, that's kind of a subjective thing because if you're flying this in the goggles, you're probably not going to see your drone. But when this thing here is still, it's beautiful. I would say it's one, if not my most beautiful drone in my fleet, guys. Aesthetics looks really, really good. And I'm sure it has to do with all these orange colors, the strap, and then this orange propeller as well. It all matches, man. Everything looks pretty good on the back. It just is a clean drone. Even the antennas, sometimes you have other drones with like multiple antennas. It's just a clean, simple look, and it gives me that premium feel. It could also be because of this wide deck on here. This top plate here is very, very wide. I've seen bigger drones with more narrow top plates or deck on here. And that does a lot of things, guys. That also actually helped me mount this O3 camera in here because some other drones are a little bit too narrow, can't facilitate that. But this drone here is one of the widest I've ever seen or owned, actually. Now, besides that, let's talk about the durability of the drone. Now, as you can see, the drone here looks like it's brand spanking new. I did not crash this drone in my weeks of testing. Yes, weeks of testing. I'm making sure I'm landing on concrete opposed to in the grass. Yeah, the one crash I did have though was doing my testing for the return to home. One time I did just drop out the air. Oh, but I don't have any broken arms. These arms are very, very thick, and I do suspect this drone to be very, very durable. A couple of design things here, since we're talking about durability and aesthetics, are these stand posts right here, these front posts or standoffs right here. This does and can potentially get in the way of your O3 Air camera. So you do have to consider that when you do install, or if you're gonna install O3 on this. This thing has a wide field of view. Now, in my opinion, when I did initially install it, there was just a sliver of the standoffs in there. You probably can see it in some of my videos, but that was at the maximum or the most wide setting on this. Now, it's interesting, when you change the settings in your goggles, it doesn't change the perspective in the goggles, but it does change the perspective or the image recording on your DVR. If you're gonna use the normal and the wide, it doesn't show up, it doesn't show the standoffs on here. But if you go to the utmost part, the widest view on here, the field of view, it will show a little bit of the side post. I did contact Nord5 and they did tell me there's a way around this. And all I had to do was mount the top screw of the camera to the bottom post of this adjuster right here. And that moves the camera a little bit further forward. It's gonna be hard to see, but you can see it's a little bit further out on here. All right, and that eliminates the majority of the standoffs in here. In the widest view, I'm seeing just a tiny, it's a tiny bit of the top post on here, but that's interesting. I'm sure Nord5 can redesign these side plates here for the camera eventually in their second version of this. The second thing about this drone, as far as durability, like I said, it's a very durable drone. I never crashed it, but one thing you do have to respect that you have to put thread lock on the screws at the bottom here for the arms. But at one flight, I did have some loose screws on my arms. As I said, I was notified numerous times. In fact, I have it right here. This is my receipt for my purchase. I did purchase this drone, and it says, please remember to add Loctite to shoulder bolts. All right, and here's my thread lock Loctite, and I didn't put it on there on my build. And sure enough, it did back out a little bit. So that's my suggestion to you. Make sure you have some Loctite on there. Luckily, Nord5 did include some extra hardware on their kit there, so I had one extra on here, and we're back in business, so no issues at all. So having said all that, what do I think about the Nord5 HD? Well, in short, I love this drone, honestly, guys. Now, I'm a little bit biased because I helped to put the components on there, so there's some sentimental value, put the tune. There's a lot of things when you build a drone and customize it to your own specifications. But this thing met and exceeded all my expectations, and I love looking at it. But from an objective perspective, this is my most feature-rich drone in my fleet. This thing has all the features that I would want. I actually even played around with the Wi-Fi module on this here, so now I can configure my drone in the field. It's pretty awesome, pretty convenient. I have the O3 air unit in here with a 4K DVR. Now I have 120 frames per second recording as well. I have GPS, compass, and I have Express ELRS. This thing is a confidence-inspiring drone. As I said before, guys, I even have my 3D mount here for my action camera, but so far I haven't had a need for it. I mean, looking at the footage on here, this thing gives really good image. You know, DJI does claim that this is an action cam replacement. For the work I'm doing, I would agree with that. Now, if you're getting a professional or paid gig, you might still want to have an action camera on here for the best performance. But even for me, just flying around and doing some general flying and recording, just using the stabilization, the built-in stabilization on this was enough for me. It was good enough. So I'm totally pleased with this drone, the way it looks, the way it performs. And honestly, guys, I contacted Nord5 a few times and their customer service is great. I got fast response. I think it took me only like a week to get this frame from Sweden. And then they did follow up with me when I had questions about some of the things on here. So customer service is very great. And that's one thing you're gonna get by getting this frame here. So overall, this drone here is gonna be a keeper, guys. I'll be doing a lot more testing on this drone. You'll be seeing some other videos from this drone, not particularly about this drone and the frame, but other aspects of this drone, like I'll be doing some testing on this camera, as well as the GPS compass, and then the return to home. So this is gonna be a little bit of a workhorse or a little bit of a experimental drone for the next couple of weeks and months, guys. Now, if you're looking to make your image from your O3 air unit look a little bit better and more professional, I have some right here. These are the Firmware ND filters. I've used some just recently for this video. These are both the ND and the polarized filter, giving you more cinematic look. I've done full reviews on these filters, and I'll leave that video linked right here. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.